Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive economic shift that's happening in India, and it all starts in a pretty surprising place, its farm fields. We're going to tackle a really big question. Can the simple act of a farmer switching from one crop to another actually change the economic fortune of an entire country? Let's get into it. So this is the core question the study set out to answer. And, for a country like India, where farming is a way of life for millions of people, the answer to this isn't just academic. It has huge real-world consequences. All right, Section 1, India's Farming Revolution. To really solve this mystery, we first need to wrap our heads around one key idea. And that big idea is called crop diversification. So instead of putting all your seeds in one basket, planting only rice or only wheat, farmers are spreading their risk and their opportunity across a bunch of different plants. This shift is all about becoming more resilient, both to economic shocks and environmental ones. And this comparison really lays out the stakes. Look at the difference. Sticking to a single crop, that's incredibly risky. One bad pest, one price crash, and it could be a total disaster. But with diversification, farmers can build a kind of safety net for themselves. It gives them a much more stable income, and it can even make their land healthier in the long run. Moving on to Section 2, why farmers are switching. So, what's actually motivating this massive shift on the ground? Let's take a look at the forces driving Indian farmers to change the way they've been working for generations. Well, the crucial point here is that this isn't some random trend. It's a calculated response. Farmers are chasing higher profits from things like fruits and vegetables, which fetch a better price. They're also adapting to a changing India, where a growing middle class wants a wider variety of foods. It's really a strategic move towards greater economic security. But, and this is a big but, it is not an easy path. The study is super clear about some pretty significant roadblocks. A lot of farmers have these small, fragmented plots of land. They often don't have the roads or storage they need to get new crops to market. And on top of all that, climate change is throwing curveballs with unpredictable weather. All right, Section 3, following the data trail. Now for the evidence. The study presents a few different clues that at first glance seem to tell conflicting stories. So let's piece them together like detectives and see what the data is really telling us. So our first clue is kind of weird. We're hearing that farming is getting better, yet agriculture's slice of India's total economic pie, its GDP, has been shrinking for decades. It went from nearly 30% in the early 90s all the way down to just about 5.7% more recently. That feels backwards, right? If the sector is getting stronger, why is its share of the economy getting smaller? Okay, clue number 2 just makes things even stranger. If farmers are growing more varied, high-value crops, you would expect exports to go up, right? But the data shows the opposite. Agriculture's share of total exports has actually fallen. At the same time, its share of imports has more than doubled. This just doesn't seem to add up. To get to the bottom of this, the researchers used a really clever tool called the Shannon Index. You can just think of it as a diversity score for the country's farmland. A low score means everyone's growing the same few things. A high score means there's a huge variety of crops out there. It gives us one single number to track this whole trend. And here it is, our third and final clue, the diversification score itself. As you can see, it's bounced around a little, but it's stayed in this pretty tight range. This tells us that while diversification is definitely happening, it's been more of a slow and steady shift, not some overnight revolution. So to recap our clues, we have a shrinking GDP share, really weird trade numbers, and a slow, steady diversification. What is going on? Section 4, the study's final verdict. So how do all these clues connect? Well, the researchers plugged all of this data into their economic model to see exactly how that diversity score affects everything else. And this is where the mystery finally gets solved. And the result is pretty staggering. The model found that for every 1-point increase on that diversity score, the agricultural GDP rockets up by nearly 370 points. And this, right here, solves our first puzzle. It shows that while farming might be a smaller piece of the total economic pie, diversification is making that piece incredibly rich and valuable. So what about that trade puzzle? Here's the answer. For every 1-point increase in diversification, agricultural exports climb by more than 71 points. This means growing a wider variety of crops directly creates more valuable goods that India can sell to the rest of the world. And finally, check this out. The model shows the impact on self-sufficiency. As that diversity score goes up by 1 point, the need for agricultural imports plummets by over 100 points. In other words, by growing a greater variety of food at home, India strengthens its own food security and becomes less dependent on everyone else. Okay, let's wrap this up in Section 5, what this means for India. So, the verdict is in and it's crystal clear. Crop diversification is a powerful engine for India's economy. So what does all this mean in the big picture? Well, the study's conclusion is that this shift is pretty much a win on every level. It's a clear path to putting more money in farmers' pockets, it strengthens the entire nation's trade balance and its food security, and it builds a more sustainable, more resilient agricultural sector that's better prepared for the future.
And this is a really critical but. The researchers warn that none of this potential is automatic. As this quote highlights, success depends entirely on directly addressing those real-world hurdles that farmers are up against every single day.
And that leaves us with this final thought. The data proves there's incredible potential in India's farm fields. But unlocking that potential isn't just up to the farmers. It really depends on building the roads, the policies, and the investments to help them succeed. The answer may grow from the soil, but the solution